At 3 a.m., Carol Driscoll knelt beside the pond's outflow valve in the dark, forced open the lock with bolt cutters, and spun the release wheel wide.
That eyesore is finally gone. Now the HOA can build the splash pad they deserve.
Water roared through the cut pipe, draining tens of thousands of gallons into a dry creek bed, carrying years of stocked trout with it. By sunrise, the 12-acre pond was a muddy graveyard. Trophy rainbow trout lay scattered on the cracked mud, their gills still orange tags glinting in the morning light. Andrew Reeves pulled up in his pickup, stepping out to the smell of dead fish and mud.
Someone did this on purpose, and I think I know who.
Carol Driscoll posted on Facebook, "Eyesore gone. Splash pad, here we come." A photo of the empty pond attached.
Jensen. It's Andrew. Someone cut the outflow valve. The pond drained overnight. Every trout is dead.
This pond was a state co-managed trophy fishery. Those orange tags, they prove it. Draining it is a felony water resource crime, Andrew.
David, it's your brother. The pond's been sabotaged, the one Fish and Wildlife stocked. I need you to make some calls on this.
Andrew drove straight to Carol's house, the image of tagged trout still burning in his mind.
Andrew, come to admire the new view? No more algae pit.
You drained a state-managed fishery, Carol. Those fish were tagged. It's a felony.
Felony? For draining a mud hole? Please, the HOA board fully supported me.
Andrew didn't bother responding. He turned away just as a white Fish and Wildlife truck pulled to the curb, logo shining. Officer Jensen stepped out, citation folder in hand, and walked toward the house with a grim expression.
Carol Driscoll, you are cited for unlawful drainage of state waters. This pond was a co-managed trophy fishery.
The citation listed water resource destruction, restitution estimates, and a mandatory court date.
This is a mistake. I'll have my lawyer call your supervisor and straighten this out.
Ma'am, the state will pursue charges. This is not a parking ticket. You vandalized a protected resource.
Carol slammed the door and immediately called her attorney, her voice sharp with anger.
Brad, I got a citation for draining the pond. They're calling it a felony. I need you to make this go away.
Her attorney's reply made the morning coffee turn cold in her stomach. He explained the pond was under a state co-management agreement. The orange tags made it a protected fishery. This was criminal, not civil.
This is absurd. It was just a mud hole. There is no way a few dead fish equal a felony.
Meanwhile, in Denver, Senator David Reeves ended a call with Fish and Wildlife and dialed the Attorney General's office.
This is Senator Reeves. I need a full briefing on the illegal drainage of a state co-managed pond, my brother's property. Noon.
His chief of staff began pulling the co-management agreement and flagging the case for immediate legal review. Back home, Carol canceled her afternoon appointments and scoured online records for any sign of a state stocking program.
They're overreacting. It was just a pond. No judge will ever convict me over some dead fish.
That evening, the HOA held an emergency meeting. Carol took the podium with two loyal board members.
Reeves Pond was an algae pit. I drained it to protect property values and build the splash pad.
Some nodded, others hesitated, troubled by the morning's dead trout.
That pond was a state-managed trophy fishery. Here's the co-management agreement, signed, sealed, and filed.
He held up the document, state seal visible, listing protected stocking schedules.
This was never disclosed. The board didn't approve any state deal on private property.
It's my property, Carol. The state stocked it under conservation law. You destroyed evidence and committed a felony.
Two board members exchanged uneasy glances. One muttered that this might jeopardize the entire HOA.
Andrew, the governor's office has been briefed. They're watching this case closely as a state resource matter.
Andrew ended the call. Through the window, Carol was still arguing, but her support was crumbling. Carol's attorney offered a settlement by phone. Fish and Wildlife refused to negotiate. Criminal referrals were underway. Within hours, a local reporter called Andrew, asking about the drained pond and the state's involvement.
I can confirm this property is under a co-management agreement. The law will determine consequences. That's all I can say.
By noon, a news van parked outside the HOA office. Cameras captured the dry mud where Trout once swam.
The news alert lit her phone. Her post was still public, the photo of the empty pond. Delete it. Get rid of it. Without evidence, they'll drop this.
But Andrew had already captured every screenshot that morning, time-stamped it, backed up.
You can always count on people to incriminate themselves. Always keep the receipts.
That evening, the state attorney general's office quietly opened a formal investigation into water resource destruction. The next morning, Senator Reeves called the governor's chief of staff directly. The call was patched through without delay.
Tell the governor the drained pond was his trophy fishery. The fish he personally requested are dead.
Governor Callahan listened to the briefing, his jaw tightening as he stared at the photos of tagged trout scattered in mud.
I'll visit that pond tomorrow, no press release. I want to see what's left of my trout with my own eyes.
By midday, state troopers secured the property. Yellow tape stretched across the mudflats where trout once swam. Within hours, local news broke the story: Governor Callahan to visit illegally drained state fishery.
The governor? Why would he care about some fish? What have I done?
The TV report detailed the state's trophy stocking program, mentioning the governor's annual fundraiser scheduled for next week.
This is a nightmare. That pond was never just water. It was a state asset. I drained a governor's trout pond. They're going to destroy me.
The next morning, a black SUV with state flags pulled up to the drained pond. Governor Callahan stepped out, flanked by troopers.
This is worse than the photos. Those tagged trout were part of a state legacy. Walk me through it, Mr. Reeves.
Valve cut around 3 a.m. Water drained in hours. Every fish was dead by sunrise, tags still in their fins.
This isn't just vandalism, it's an assault on state resources. I will push the Attorney General for maximum prosecution.
His aides scribbled notes as troopers kept reporters at bay. The governor turned back to Andrew.
You have my word, Andrew. Whoever did this will face the full weight of the law. I don't care who they think they are.
That evening, the governor's furious statement led every broadcast. News tickers scrolled Carol Driscoll's name beside the dead trout.
My name is on the news. The governor is speaking like I'm a criminal, not some HOA dispute. A criminal?
By midnight, the HOA office's phones exploded. Residents demanded Carol's immediate removal. By morning, 3 of the 5 HOA board members emailed their resignations, effective immediately.
You can't all quit. This is a coordinated smear campaign to destroy me.
The last board member handed Carol a typed letter and followed the others out, the door clicking shut.
Even my own HOA has turned on me. They're abandoning ship like I'm radioactive.
She called 3 private defense attorneys. All cited the governor's public stance and declined. The last attorney told her bluntly, "This is a political case. No one will touch it while the governor is watching."
The law will determine consequences. My job is to let it work, nothing more.
News stations looped his interview, pairing it with the governor's visit. Social media branded Carol an eco-vandal.
They're calling me an eco-terrorist. I just drained a pond to build a splash pad. I have no one. The governor wants my head. My lawyer can't help, and the whole state hates me.
By noon, the Attorney General finalized the felony complaint. Senator David Reeves called an immediate press conference.
The state will prosecute Carol Driscoll for felony water resource destruction. This was no minor infraction. And I'll state publicly, the pond she drained belongs to my brother, Andrew Reeves. This is personal and principled.
Cameras flashed as the senator left the podium, his words already spreading across news feeds.
A senator? Andrew's brother? I didn't just fight a neighbor. I attacked the family of a state legislator. I didn't just anger the governor, I made an enemy of the man leading the prosecution. There's no way out now.
She switched off the TV, but the silence was worse.
Everything I touched is gone. HOA, lawyers, reputation, and I still haven't faced a judge.
The HOA board formally voted to dissolve the association, pending state approval. Carol wasn't invited. Andrew, at home, received a text from his brother. Charges filed. It's in the hands of the court now. He set down the phone and looked out at the dry pond, waiting. Next afternoon, a process server handed Carol the felony complaint as news cameras rolled across the street. The document read, State of Colorado v. Carol Driscoll, felony water resource destruction.
I'm being charged like a criminal. My life is over.
Her attorney called the prosecutor that evening, offering a plea, but the governor's office intervened. The governor's chief of staff told them, no deals. This case goes to trial with full penalties sought. Simultaneously, the state froze the HOA's nonprofit status, shutting down its operations pending investigation.
They're destroying the HOA. I did this. I destroyed the very thing I was trying to protect.
That night, Andrew's phone rang. Governor Callahan was on the line.
Andrew, I want to thank you for your patience. The state owes you a debt.
I just wanted the pond restored, Governor. The rest is the law doing its work.
The state revoked the HOA's nonprofit recognition, citing misuse of authority and criminal actions by its president. Carol's titles were stripped by official mail. She was no longer a board member, no longer the chair.
The HOA is dead. The thing I built, I destroyed. I'm nothing now.
The county commissioner contacted Andrew, proposing to preserve the pond as a public resource under the co-management agreement.
I'll work with Fish and Wildlife on restoration. The pond belongs to everyone now. Let's do it right.
He met Officer Jensen at the dam. They walked the dry bed, marking points for habitat restoration and new signage.
We'll restock the trophy trout and install new controls. This pond will be better than ever.
A backhoe began reshaping the basin, removing the broken valve and debris that had poisoned the ecosystem.
From ruin, something better. My grandfather would approve.
While they rebuild, I'm left with nothing but a court date.
The pre-trial hearing began. Judge Patricia Morris presided over a packed courtroom. Carol Driscoll sat at the defense table, her attorney beside her, face pale under the fluorescent lights. The prosecution displayed the cut valve photo on screen, time-stamped to the night of the drainage. Jensen's affidavit detailed the state stocking program, the tags, and the destruction of trophy trout. Her attorney argued she had no knowledge of the state program. This was an internal HOA matter.
Ignorance of the law is no defense. The state has established probable cause. This case will proceed to trial on all counts.
Senator Reeves sat in the gallery, arms crossed, his eyes never leaving the defense table. The judge denied the motion to dismiss and scheduled the trial for 6 weeks out. Andrew met his brother in the marble hallway. The senator's voice was low and firm.
The judge saw through her excuses. Now we let a jury or bench trial prove what she did. She picked the wrong family, Andrew.
That evening, Carol's sedan rolled up Andrew's driveway. She stepped out, red-eyed, trembling.
Andrew, please. I know I was wrong. I'll pay for restocking. Just make the charges go away.
Carol, you drained a state fishery. Thousands of fish died. Apologies don't bring back life.
I was only thinking about the splash pad. I never meant to break the law. You have to understand.
I understand you broke the law. The pond was under state protection. Your remorse doesn't undo that.
Andrew stepped back, his silhouette filling the doorframe, voice quiet as stone.
He's not going to budge. I've thrown myself at his mercy, and there is none.
The state will handle this. My duty is to let the law work. Goodbye, Carol.
The door swung shut with a final click, leaving Carol on the cold porch. She stood for a long moment, then walked back to her car, shoulders slumped. There was no way out. 6 weeks later, the trial opened. Judge Morris entered the courtroom as the gallery fell silent. The prosecutor began. The pond was a state co-managed trophy fishery. Carol Driscoll deliberately drained it. He displayed the cut valve photo and Jensen's affidavit. Then he read the governor's written statement. From the governor. Those trout were personally requested for my charity fundraiser. Their loss is an attack on state stewardship. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Carol's face turned paler with every word.
I found the valve cut, the pond empty, dead tagged trout everywhere. There was no accident. This was deliberate.
Carol's lawyer challenged Jensen. Had he seen her touch the valve? Jensen answered no, but the evidence is undeniable. The judge listened, but her expression remained unmoved. Senator Reeves, seated in the gallery, nodded slowly as the prosecution's case solidified. By the end of the day, the prosecution rested. Carol's fate now rested on her own defense. The next morning, Carol Driscoll took the stand, her pink fleece replaced by a somber navy blazer.
I had no idea the state was involved. To me, it was just a neglected pond on HOA property.
Her attorney walked her through a script of ignorance, but the judge's eyes narrowed when the cross-examination began. The prosecutor showed her Facebook post, time-stamped 3 hours before the drainage, boasting about removing the eyesore. He asked if she had consulted the HOA board before cutting the valve. Her voice began to shake.
I thought the board would understand. We talked about it. I didn't go through the formal vote.
The judge wrote something on her notepad. The prosecutor pressed, "You didn't have authority, did you?"
I just wanted a splash pad for the kids. That's all. I never meant to hurt the fish, or the governor, or anyone.
She broke down completely, her admission hanging in the courtroom like a verdict before the verdict. The defense rested. Carol's own words had done what the prosecution could not, shatter any remaining doubt. The prosecutor's final words cut through the silence, deliberate destruction of state resources, demanding the maximum penalty. He held up photographs of dead tagged trout. They belonged to the people of this state, and she destroyed them. Carol's attorney spoke of her community service, asking the court to see a misguided act, not a criminal.
I will review the evidence and return tomorrow with my verdict. This court stands adjourned until then.
The gavel cracked. The gallery rose in uneasy silence. Senator Reeves approached the prosecution, shook the attorney's hand, then turned toward his brother. Andrew remained motionless in the second row, hands steepled, his gaze locked on the empty witness stand. At the defense table, Carol Driscoll cried into her hands, her sobs the only sound in the emptying room. In the corridor, Senator Reeves paused beside Andrew. "Whatever the verdict, she won't threaten your land again." Andrew finally stood, straightened his vest, and walked toward the exit. The pond had been silent for months. Soon the law would speak. At 9 o'clock, Judge Morris entered. The courtroom was packed, every eye forward.
This court finds Carol Driscoll guilty of all charges. The evidence was overwhelming.
Carol's legs gave way. Her attorney caught her elbow before she collapsed.
You destroyed a state-protected fishery with reckless intent. This was not an accident.
The judge ordered her held without bail until sentencing. A bailiff produced handcuffs. Carol's wrists were cuffed. She made no sound, but tears streaked her face. Andrew Reeves watched from the gallery, then let a small, satisfied smile surface. His brother, the senator, sat quietly beside him, arms folded. Neither needed words. As Carol was led past, her eyes briefly met Andrew's. He nodded once, silent, final. The bailiff escorted her through the side door, and the courtroom dissolved into quiet murmurs. 1 week later, Carol Driscoll returned to the same courtroom in a county-issued jumpsuit, hands cuffed, face hollow.
For felony water resource destruction, this court sentences you to 2 years probation, $150,000 restitution, and 500 hours of community service.
Probation, restitution, community service. My life is measured in fines and trash bags now.
The judge also ordered the HOA permanently dissolved, its remaining assets seized to cover restitution. Senator Reeves, seated in the front row, gave a single grim nod. The family business was finished. Carol was led away, her sobs filling the marble hall for the last time. Outside the courthouse, Andrew Reeves faced a scrum of reporters, calm as the first day he'd found the dead trout.
The law worked. My pond will be restored. That's all I ever wanted.
Newspapers printed his quiet words below the headline. HOA chair convicted. Pond to be restocked. Andrew walked away from the cameras, the stone steps behind him marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Weeks later, the pond shimmered under a clean sky, its banks alive with families and fishing lines. A freshly mounted plaque read, "State Co-Managed Trophy Pond, restored by the people." Governor Callahan arrived without fanfare, stepping out of a sedan in a simple polo, and shook Andrew's hand firmly.
You handled this like a true steward, Andrew. The state won't forget it.
My grandfather built this pond. I just protected it.
The governor then pulled a small commemorative plaque from his aide and handed it to Andrew personally. It read simply, "For stewardship above self, Andrew Reeves." A new sign stood by the bank, "Fishing by permit only, state co-management." The governor spent an hour casting a line, and before leaving, clasped Andrew's shoulder. "Your grandfather chose well," Callahan said. Andrew nodded, watching a child pull in a trout near the restored spillway. As the sun dipped low, Andrew remained alone on the bench, the last families packing up their tackle. He reached into his vest and pulled out a creased black and white photograph. He set the photo on the bench beside him, his grandfather, standing proudly by this pond the year it was dug.
The old man's hands built every foot of this bank, and I almost lost it.
His phone buzzed. A news clip showed Carol Driscoll in a fluorescent vest, picking up trash along a highway. She looked smaller, older, the fluorescent vest swallowing her frame. The camera panned away. Andrew locked the screen and put the phone away. He looked at the water, not the woman.
Pa would have liked this.
The pond stretched calm before him, a heron gliding low over the glassy surface, the far bank dotted with families and fishing poles. He stayed until the first stars appeared, the only sound the splash of a feeding trout. The next morning, the pond lay still under a honey-gold sun, the state plaque glinting on its new post. Andrew Reeves walked the bank alone, hands tucked into the pockets of his vest, his pace unhurried. A blue heron stood motionless in the shallows, watching the water with ancient patience. Some people measure land in acres. Andrew Reeves had always measured it in what he could leave behind. He stopped beside the plaque, ran a thumb over the engraved words, and let the silence settle. He didn't need to speak. The trout rising to feed, the children's laughter in the distance, they spoke for him. The law had finished its work. The pond had healed, and Andrew Reeves was exactly where he was supposed to be. The heron lifted, slow wing beats carrying it across the glassy water toward the far tree line. When the land is worth more than money, the fight leaves marks that don't wash away. But Andrew Reeves was washing them away, one cast at a time. The pond would stay, and every trout that broke the surface was a promise kept. Andrew paused at the "Fishing by Permit Only" sign, his thumb brushing the fresh lettering. He let his hand fall from the plaque, the weight of years finally lifting from his shoulders. Then he turned and walked slowly toward the tree-lined path, his figure growing smaller against the wide pond. Behind him, children's laughter rose from the bank, a boy holding up a small trout to his grinning father. The water sparkled under the climbing sun, a dozen fishing lines casting arcs of light. The heron from earlier stood once more at the water's edge, a silent sentinel. Andrew didn't look back. The pond was no longer his to defend alone. It belonged to everyone now. The path curved, and Andrew disappeared into the trees, his story already folding into the land itself. The camera held on the pond, children laughing, trout rising, the plaque catching the gold light. And then, slowly, the image faded to black.